Stay with us, Jermaine. We're heading for a year big in many people's lives. 1968, very briefly, what were you doing in 1968? Is it broadcastable what you were up to in 1968?
I was worrying.
Yeah.
I was worrying because my friends in Europe, I had an Italian boyfriend, and they were all involved in sit-ins and occupations.
Right. So
it was getting to the point where they were talking about violence and using weapons, and I was getting worried that they would, or that I had a duty to inform on them, or something, not let it go that far.
It was appropriately, kind of, the soundtrack to that time was the White Album by the Beatles.
Yeah, it was November 22nd, in fact, that came out. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, but then, yes.
Sexy Sadie may no longer be with us. There's no USSR to go back to, and Giles Brandreth's put his caftan away a few years ago, but we sent him down to Abbey Road anyway.
It's 40 years since the Beatles' White Album was released, one of the most remarkable and diverse records in the history of popular music. The album, 30 songs over 2 discs, was recorded here in this studio in London's Abbey Road. The album was originally going to be called A Doll's House, and the cover was going to feature the Beatles and a bunch of wild animals. But something happened. The title was abandoned, and as a reaction to the busy, multicoloured covers that the Beatles had helped foster, they decided on having no artwork at all. The White Album was born. Mainly through the writing skills of John Lennon and Paul McCartney, the songs reflect the life and struggles of the time in which they were recorded. Has there ever been a year like 1968? At a time when nations and cultures were still separate, there occurred a spontaneous combustion of rebellious spirits that shook the world. The fighting was at its most horrific in '68. A nation of unprecedented power was attempting to subdue a weak and fragile country and sparked mass protest around the world.
I think 2 million or more Vietnamese were killed by the Americans.
It was the first time that youth had been internationalised. They all saw the same things, and that was through TV.
Back in the USSR. The Beach Boys pastiche clearly indicated where the Beatles' sympathies lay, supporting anything but the US.
Have you seen the little piggies?
In 2 of his compositions on the album, George Harrison shows his awareness of the times.
Little Piggies was taken by some people to be an attack upon the police.
And in his despairing lament, While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
While my guitar gently weeps.
Early in the year, while in India at the Maharishi Yogi's retreat for transcendental meditation, the Beatles wrote many of the songs that were to feature on the album.
Dear Prudence, dedicated to Mia Farrow's sister, because she just kind of locked herself away and wasn't part of the group. And he was saying, as he implores on the song, for her to come out and play.
Blackbird singing in the dead
On the 4th of April, Martin Luther King, the black American civil rights leader, was shot dead in Memphis. Blackbird, a McCartney composition, is a song of hope.
Progress comes from 2 things, the flame of anger against injustice and the flame of hope. You can build a better world.
The Beatles' sessions for the album are famous not only for the songs that were on it, but also for the songs that weren't.
Paul actually phoned me up and asked me, could he write a song for me? Step inside, love, let me find you a place.
Step inside, love, I want you to stay.
Enoch Powell used language, the rivers of blood, which stimulated hostility to immigrants.
Multiculturalism was being attacked by a politician, but in contrast was being applauded by the Beatles. The White Album was also the band's formal transition from 4-track to 8-track recording and marked a diverse set of songs, some being very experimental. It was like a work of art that took time to appreciate. Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Early days of really playing with tape recorders in an unusual way.
It sounds like 4 different people making the same album.
I think by the time John got to doing I'm So Tired, he was actually tired of the Beatles.
The curse Sir Walter Raleigh was such a stupid get was such a funny line.
The roller coaster year was to finish with an historic mission of human endeavour. Apollo 8's flight became the most watched television program ever. The White Album, like the year in which it was released, ended on a note of hope, with a song that described the sun turning out its light and the moon beginning to shine. Reflecting the images taken from Apollo 8, it was like a lullaby that observed the world from a distance. Our beautiful home, the Earth, glistening alone, blue and white. Good night.